Here we go.
And it is episode 18. That's Steve. I'm Al.
Yep.
And oh yeah, food of the day is pizza from Jets. Semi-new to the area. Detroit style. Well, mine's Detroit style. He got
I got
thin
the
crust.
thin crust Chicago style.
Yep.
It's very, very close. Much closer to anything else here. Chicago style. I got it cut in squares. We had this a few weeks back, but we decided to go with
Yeah,
this again.
it's
and I
good
forgot my
pizza.
soda again as usual, so you
yeah.
can start.
It's good pizza, and it's a little bit cheaper than the one we do other times. Not that necessarily played into it, but these days with prices being what they are, it doesn't hurt. So topic number one, because it seems like it's, it's the most timely, and the shutdown, which similar to the last one under the Trump administration. For those of you who might have forgotten, there was not an actual shutdown. There were threats of shutdown, but not an actual shutdown under Biden. This is 110% the fault of the Republicans. Let's just be honest, because it is freaking weird the way in which they're trying badly to control the optics. Like if you try and log on to a government website or whatever, you get this weird message about the Democrats shut down the government. The Democrats are the only ones showing up to talk about this. They're the only ones showing up. Mike Johnson is telling the Republicans to go home and not come out. If you don't have a discussion, you can't change anything. So they're not working. They're not trying. They're not even putting on the farce or the pretense of trying to work through anything. Well, whatever the anything is, they're not even pretending. That's right. What's so weird about it.
Yeah, so maybe you can tell them like what some of the contentions that they say are.
Oh yeah, the claim from the Republicans is that Democrats want to give health care to undocumented immigrants. That's the claim. The reality is that at best, Democrats want to preserve things that already exist. So the worst that you could say is, the undocumented immigrants are somehow getting some form of something, and we just want to maintain that. Well, that's not quite true, but that's the worst that you could say, because we're not actually pushing for anything new. We're just trying to remove some of the cuts that are being proposed.
Right.
But again, technically, on a federal level, there is no Medicare, Medicaid, or anything else on a federal level that can go for health care to undocumented immigrants. It's illegal. And the bits that we may or may not cover that do actually can go for illegal immigrants, they were put in there back in the 80s. Anyways, under Reagan, not under the Democrats. Right. And the whole reason why we're trying to keep them in there is not necessarily because we're trying to make sure that undocumented people get health care or anything. It's because as the law currently stands, we can't change that part. But what the Republicans are trying to do is change it so that the states don't get reimbursement funding when that happens. It's not a large percentage of anything anyways, but that's the reality of that piece of what's being talked about, just so you understand what is actually reality versus smoke and mirrors.
Right. So you've covered everything basically. I don't know how much more I can say about this. Maybe clarify a few points.
Well, we got enough other topics, so if this one's shorter, that's not a bad thing.
Well, here's the deal. They're framing this like you said, that they're cutting Medicaid or Medicare or any other type of thing, federal assistance to immigrants or asylum seekers or illegal, people that are not documented who are staying here, which is not what's happening. That does not happen. Has never happened. So that's one way that they're framing it. But basically, what they're actually doing is removing any type of assistance to. They don't want to if an illegal goes to, and I hate using this term illegal, but let's say an undocumented person comes in to any facility, they just basically don't want to give them health care, which is not only against the legislation that was signed in the 1980s under Reagan, and once again, they've been framing this that this is somehow a democratically led legislation, but that was actually signed by a Republican, their hero Reagan, in the 1980s.
Well, and to clarify, the form of help that they're legally required to give, it's not like, teeth cleanings or something like that. What it is if you walk in and you're basically bleeding out, or you've got something else where it's like you're going to die if you don't get health care, that kind of thing. What they're supposed to do is those emergency rooms are supposed to treat you regardless of whether you can pay and what your legal status is. They're not supposed to ask either question. Just, hey, let's take care of this person. That's the idea behind that.
Right, and this is across the board internationally, not just here in America. But if you go to another country and you get hit by a car, they're obligated to assist you in your emergency situation. They certainly aren't obligated if you go and plant yourself there to, go get your teeth, But I think it's in the Declaration of Human Rights, actually, from the UN. The UN Declaration of Human Rights says that if anybody comes to a country, anybody who's a member has to take care of,
And like you said, the thing that people aren't even thinking about on either side is that there's a reciprocity to this where, like you said, if there's an American in Mexico, Canada, Japan, whatever, things happen. Well, it's nice to know.
Anybody in the UN.
Yeah,
but almost every country does this, regardless of their status.
Right, regardless of whether it's not necessarily that it's a written contract. It's an understanding word.
Right. So what kind of person, wouldn't be for that? Because what happens if you go to a country and something happens to you? That's what I don't understand about the hypocrisy with all of this. These Christian nationalists, because they're so un-Christian. In so many different ways, and this being one of them. And I don't know, I can just reiterate the same thing again. They're framing it like this is a democratic legislation that started, and that it's for Medicaid and Medicare, and they're literally saying that.
But what's funny is, if they actually believe that, why wouldn't they just show up in Congress and discuss it and prove that, and then, move along with it?
This is where the second point I was going to get to, is that this is very look, this can make it look like the Democrats are the problem here. So one is they can frame this completely lie, which is what they're doing, because they know they're lying, so they're completely lying. And then secondly, they can present it as if Democrats are to blame for the government shutdown, which is why you're not receiving your check.
That's the other funny thing about this is the Republicans currently control the House, the Senate. They practically control the Supreme Court.
Well, they do.
They are at worst short by about 4 votes, which they can basically strong arm if they need to. They have the lever of control on this. So for them to point at the guys who basically have no power right now and say, "Oh, they're doing this," it's beyond disingenuous. It's just flat out goofy.
Yeah, because this is where I'm actually kind of confused myself, because look, if they wanted to bulldoze their way through this,
they easily could.
They could have. So somebody put in the comment, what
do they
what do they want? Do they just want to shut it down so that they can make it look like Democrats are forcing this situation, and then when people are getting hurt, they can just blame Democrats for it? Do they?
The funny thing is, the longer it goes, I think the more of them will actually wake up and realize that that's not what's happening.
Well, even Major Taylor, what's her name?
Even Marjorie Taylor Greene realizes that that's not what's going on. I mean, which is funny though, because that was the last point on this that I wanted to bring up, is that this actually ties back now to the files. You know which files I'm talking about, because there is one member of Congress who has to be sworn in, and once she gets sworn in, she is the final vote on supposedly releasing the files. And so it looks suspiciously, very, very suspiciously, like this has nothing to do with any other issue. It's actually just a way to stonewall the files from being released. Which is, I don't even know what to say about that, except that it looks like that's what's happening.
So I guess I think that's about it.
Yeah, that is about it. Which, again, we've got other topics, but again, throw us shit in the comments. We'll talk about it on Wednesday Live or on other videos or whatever.
Right. If you have a theory of why they would...
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's pretty apparent that they're just once again, presenting this, framing this in a way that's completely false. It's a bald-faced lie. They know it.
But they're getting more and more bold about just how blatant their lying is. Right. That's what blows me away.
So I think, and at this point, it's just so hard for me to understand how people believe it. I'm just so defeated, man. I just feel like every time they just blatantly lie, and then even if you try to watch the news, CNN and stuff like that, in a lot of cases, they won't correct the lie.
They've gotten worse and worse about correcting it.
And they've gotten worse and worse about correcting it. So, like, most of the time, I'm not even watching mainstream news anymore. And when I do turn it on, I'm kind of appalled by, the mere fact that it's not so much that they're not, telling some of the stories. It's just that they're not making as many corrections as they should be. And it's not their job just to simply report. I know people will say, well, then you're putting your bias in. But no, not when you're calling out a lie that a politician says. That's not a bias. That's just telling the truth.
Right.
That's like trying to get to some truth. So
if you're not putting the words "I think" in front of it, that's not bias. If you're just pointing out, hey, let's look at X, Y, and Z in addition to what somebody told us.
What somebody said.
Yeah.
That's still journalism. That's actually good journalism.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is once again them reframing something completely lying, and then trying to paint the picture that it's, Democrats' fault, and that the reason that you're not going to get your paycheck or your, Social Security or whatever else the case might be, it's because Democrats caused this, because they're being irreasonable. But once again, it's the lie and the reversal, just like they always do, because they're always full of shit, and they're going to ruin it for everybody.